Hello, everyone. Welcome to a joint effort from Evolutionary Astrology, Maurice Fernandez, and the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. We have come together to celebrate the Aries Ingress, the Equinox, of course, same time, Astrology Day. And something Maurice has put together, which is amazing, is a celebration of Neptune moving into Aries. So this is part one of 2 days. Part two is tomorrow. If you're here, then you know about it. Otherwise, you will get the links to part two, let's say. And it's come together as the CIA does an equinox report every year and has done for about 15 years. And it's great to see that there's so much of that going on around the world as astrologers celebrate Astrology Day and the Aries Ingress to look at the year ahead. And so coming together with these four fantastic astrologers, I first of all asked Maurice Fernandez to join me, and this is how it came about that we combined this wonderful treasure of astrologers over the next 2 days. So thank you, Maurice, for all the work that you do to put that together in this celebration. It's a really good idea, and it's nice to combine it. Thanks, Maurice.
Absolutely. And thank you for all that you do, because we see the Aries energy full on, and it's great to ride this wave.
Only the Jupiter in Aries, but anyway, that's enough to keep me going. And then we have the wonderful Ursula Stocker down in Mexico, well, up in Mexico, down in Mexico for Maurice, and the wonderful Nadiya Shah, who happens to be in Mexico at this time too. So welcome, Mexicans. It's lovely to have you join us. And the first time that I've had, well, Ursula, no, not the first time I've had Ursula, not the first time Nadiya's been part of the CIA either. So it's really good to have you got your energy join us today as well. Thank you so much, agents.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm agent 123.
That's
right.
right.
I hopped on early. Yeah.
I think it was ISA conference 2014. It's Los Angeles.
Like yeah,
I don't know. It's the times just now meld, and it's hard to. It's just amazing now that we're in 2025. You know how much we, let's say, have done in the last 15 years. Nadiya, I remember meeting you at UAC 2012, and we were kind of looking at each other, going, "Oh, you know, it's that girl." Interviewing everyone, and look at you now, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, really.
And Ursula, you've been an amazing person for so many astrologers all around the world.
Well, I do my best.
You're
You're
a Pisces. You're always connecting, and you're connecting people. You have got an astrology house. I think it's a famous astrology house in Mexico City, where there's so many events and so on. And of course, Maurice, with his work, you do so much and so prolific in sharing good astrology, let's say. So look, let's move into it. We're going to have a discussion about the Aries Ingress chart. But before we start, is there any comments about, let's just say, where we're at right now? We have an incredible equinox chart, which is a Mercury retrograde, a Venus retrograde, Neptune right at the end of Aries, and all the other things. So, sorry, at the end of Pisces. And the sun, there's something I posted last night, is the sun has just sort of kissed Neptune goodbye as it moves into Aries, because they won't be together in Pisces ever again in our lifetime. So this is the kind of magic moments of astrology, in a sense that you realize that we will never have this again, the sun with Neptune in Pisces. It will be in Aries for the next 14 years. So these are the things we're going to talk about, and focusing on the Ingress chart. But we're going to start with Ursula, as she's in Mexico. She's lived in Mexico for many years. She studied the Mexican, Mayan, Toltec, Aztec cultures to do with astrology and Venus. and especially today, the equinox. So Ursula, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I share my
Yes,
screen?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we go off. I go off, right? It's Ursula's table.
We'll
Okay.
see you soon.
See you soon.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Julia and Maurice and Nadiya too, all three very, very close to me. And well, thank you so much for the opportunity. So, well, I want to share something from Mexico, from Mexican culture, more that now we are going to have in Chichen Itza, the descent of the serpent. Every time during equinox, we can see the descent of the serpent. But I think history is going to be very important because it is the Venus temple, and now we are going to have the Cassimi also from Venus with the sun in Aries. But where did everything started with Quetzalcoatl in Tula? Here we are going to see the pyramid of Tula. This is the temple for Quetzalcoatl, and this is the temple also for Kukulkan. They only changed the name. So Quetzalcoatl, he traveled through Mexico, and he took this god mythology, whatever, to Chichen Itza. And both of them have a very different way of looking at the relation with Quetzalcoatl or with Kukulkan or with Venus, if you want to. But we have to see about history where Quetzalcoatl started. Quetzalcoatl, the artwork or the sculptures that the furthest away are found for the Olmecas. Then we have the Mayans, we have Teotihuacan, and here we have the Toltecs. The Toltecs were very, very cultured natives. They were very good artisans too, and they really were loved from Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl descended to them, and they were very poor and gave them the cocoa. And this is one of the problems that the gods got like envy, and well, there everything starts where he has to encounter himself with the obsidian mirror. But let's go on and see what happened. Later when Hernán Cortés, with the arrival of Hernán Cortés, there was this fall of Tenochtitlan. And I want to show this chart. This is a very old chart, but I think it's very interesting to see how the fall of Tenochtitlan was the 13th of August of 1521. And we had this Venus Cassini and also on the 13th of August, when Venus was also retrograde, and we had several things that were very much alike. And since then, well, we have had a lot of problems with politics in Mexico with this new government. But well, so the myth of Inanna speaks of her descent into the underworld, but we are going to have many myths that are related to this. So Quetzalcoatl's myth is also related to the descent to the underworld. But for the Toltecs, we are not going to have like the 7 chakras. We are going to have only 6. So it's very different the way they looked at in Tula, or here's Tula and here's Chichen Itza, how they related to this myth. The myth in Tula was more related to a ritual, and in Chichen Itza, it was more related to get to the cosmos, to the universe, to have like this union and balance and harmony between earth and the sky. And that's why in Chichen Itza, we had like the first observatory that was very much linked to the cycle of Venus. This observatory wasn't like thought about, or the architecture wasn't like in quarters. It was like this observatory, the wall corners lie in 27.5 degrees, so that they could really see how the Venus, the Venus cycle, and they predicted the Venus cycle even, and they had like only the 99% of precision. So it was incredible what they really did with their observatory around Venus and around the planet. They thought that Sun and Venus were like twins. They were always like together, and for them that was very good. So Quetzalcoatl, or the myth of Quetzalcoatl, is going to move from Tula to Cacaxtla. There are also really great depictions of him. And then it is going to move all this Mayapan to Chichen Itza. Here's where we are going to have Chichen Itza. So in Tula, it is going to be different the way they've envisioned like the Quetzalcoatl, because they made this Chicuco. It's a mountain where they said that here was the mountain of Venus, of Quetzalcoatl, and the pyramids were the sun, the moon, and the planets. So here is where always like the Cassini between Venus and sun happened for them, and that was like something very, very different. So the Venus cycle, here's first Tula, the Tula and the Chicuco, from where they saw the Venus and all the Venus cycle, and the ritual that happened through this Venus cycle was like going through each of these temples, depending when or where Venus was seen. So they divided the monument and the cycle of Venus into six periods. So for them, that was important to divide it. So here's the one of the others. If in Tula, there is the mirror that embraces creation. So what do they see here? It's like the opposite, like Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, they are opposites. They are not one. So the twin brother of Quetzalcoatl is Xolotl, is the dog that we are going to see how it is going to move and what is going to happen with all this process of transformation of Quetzalcoatl, and why he later moves to other parts of the country, why he leaves Tula, and what happens there that he leaves Tula. So there is a first period, so we are going to divide it in six. So it's the first period where the sun is preparing to resurface in the kingdom of fire Venus. It's hidden, and from the square, the plaza, we say it's plaza. I don't know if I translated it okay. It's it's where all the pyramids are. So he has to go and to reach the fire to get like this transformation, this evolution. So Quetzalcoatl goes down, and we have like these carpets that are called metates. These metates are like, they look like this, and what it means, they are the serpents. These serpents, where he is going to meet death, and he is going to be with his own death, and there he is going to find himself with Chacmol. There is another Chacmol found recently in Chichen Itza under the pyramid. So Chacmol, he has here like this obsidian mirror. With that obsidian mirror, he's going to see himself. He is going to see his own shadow through this evolution and this transformation. So Chacmol is not a god. It's like a priest that's going to be between him and his soul or whatever he has to work on. So in the first period of this Venus, the second period, the first one was going down into the fire under the earth. So he has to encounter this part of the underworld. In the second period, here is Quetzalcoatl with the eagle. Mount Chicuco moves westward like Venus when it moves in the afternoon. Travel at night on the eagle of the night. Travel with the eagle that is the symbol of the sunset sun. The Lord of the night gives Quetzalcoatl the mountain. Then the envy of the gods. The gods get very angry at Quetzalcoatl because he gave to humanity the cacao. So the cacao was only like this ambrosia of the gods. So he gave them this, and the gods were very, very angry. So they sent Tezcatlipoca to make this revenge. What did they do on this revenge? He got him drunk. Tezcatlipoca got Quetzalcoatl drunk, and he flirted with his cousin. He had sex with his cousin. And the worst part of it is that Tezcatlipoca gave meat to eat to Quetzalcoatl. That was something really terrible. So in this second period, well, the Quetzalcoatl has to encounter with his shadow. And this shadow is for him very difficult to encounter. So shows him the mirror where he sees divinity. Quetzalcoatl was in Tula and received a trap from Tezcatlipoca, who wanted to usurp his power. So he wanted to take away the power because of the envy too. So what he faces there is that he is going to be without flesh. He is going to die. In this process, Quetzalcoatl is going to die. And there are three organs that are going to be very important in this procedure. That is tonali, located in the head of the individual. That means fate and destiny. Then Teyolilia, related to the heart, the essence was the one when dying and spent some time, went to the place that was destined to it according to the form of that. That was the conscious. And Iyiyotl, entitled, related to the liver, the soul. So when shamans made like this part, when they do like black magic or whatever, what they are going to really want to destroy is the liver. So the liver is something that is going to be very important for this transformation, this Quetzalcoatl or this Venus transformation. So here is Jicuco. And for the natives, the mountain and the sun together represented God. So what Venus has to do is come again to the sun. He has to encounter this place again through his transformation, going through the six conscious parts. So according to Matos and Solis, out of the open flesh in the stomach, a great liver appears, the organ where the Iliyotl soul dwells. The liver was connected to Mictlan, the underworld. The Iliyotl, it is one of the three mystical elements that inhabits the human body. The tonali, the determination of one's fate, is located in the head. So, and the Teyolia, the house of consciousness, resides in the heart. In this sculpture, the deity is showing where one of those three mystical elements rest in the human body until death. So he has to die, and then he is going to encounter the flower. The flower in the body is related to the sun. Here is the flower in the body. So, sorry. But be open to be part of the whole to enter the mountain flower. The mountain flower in the human body is the lungs and the heart. Quetzalcoatl travels along the stem of the flower accompanied by butterflies on the human body. The first butterfly is located in the pelvis. Quetzalcoatl travels along. So he has to travel along the different vertebrae, like the little butterfly, and to have like this transformation. Quetzalcoatl travels along the stem of the flower, accompanied by the butterflies on the human body. The first butterfly is located in the pelvis. Quetzalcoatl travels along the stem of its column. The butterfly vertebrae are the fire that ascends to your inner sky. The skull is the celestial wall. The cosmos and the sky come together in one form. The snake is the conduct, the duct through which it passes through the other side of the earth. The column is the stem of the flower, is a passage to reach divinity. Quetzalcoatl has traveled the flower stem accompanied by butterflies. The skull is a celestial world. The cosmos and the sky come together in one form. Then after that, then the third period, he has to go into the water. And in the water, he's going to be washed and cleansed. He can't be cleansed until he saw himself in the mirror in the shadow. So this shadow, he has to embrace that with humility, and then he is going to be cleansed and again free. So after that, Quetzalcoatl will follow through the water, through this lake in Tula, like his twin Xolotl. Xolotl is the dog that's always going to accompany him into the underworld, because he was like a little afraid to go into the underworld. But Xolotl, the dog, is the one who is going to give him his bones again, so he can be again a human. So later Xolotl will reappear in a shell. It's typical of Venus too, that comes out of the ocean. Quetzalcoatl delivers a cup of water to Tlaloc. It's the rain god to create rain. From here the lightning arises, the clouds are born. Whoever has touched this flies like green feathers and must behave with humility. Sadly and mostly calling the god, the Aztecs reconstructed several of the elements of the Toltec cosmogony. The petroglyphs of the Aztecs found on Mount Tula were duplicated at Tepeyac, showing that the Aztecs duplicated what they saw at Tula. When the Aztecs came to Tula, it wasn't really nice, because the Toltecs weren't really nice people. They didn't like to make sacrifices or things like that. So for them, it was really difficult that they made it. The fourth period, descent into the underworld, Venus goes through a period of invisibility to enter the underworld. The presence or absence of the mountain has a relationship, locates the soul with that relationship, and any position of Venus holds a longing for a position of the soul here. Quetzalcoatl shapes his god. The sky opens, the earth opens. It descends through the center of the flower, through the ball game, down into the earth. Descend from the flower of the stars through the ball game to enter the monster of the earth. Here, Quetzalcoatl joins his flesh and bones. So Xolotl gives him back his flesh and bones, so he can again be reborn and can regain all his strength. So the planet that is closest to the sun is Mount Chicuco, Venus, the morning star, visible for both, for in Chichen Itza, for the Mayans, and for the Toltecs, the Venus morning star was the important one, okay? Well, not less, but it was. The dross, Quetzal will be burned by the sun eventually. Birds of many colors are born, and from their heart arises the morning star. He burns himself in the bonfire. Many birds are born. From his heart, the morning star rises. The eagle that represents the sun eats Venus. Venus and the sun merge into one. The wind mountain is a hollow mountain. This mountain in the human body is the inverted pelvis. Quetzalcoatl, as a morning star, releases its air that blooms and drives the sun so that it is not fixed burning the earth. The cycle of Venus returns to its origin. Quetzalcoatl returns to the womb of the earth, goddess, and passes through its strata in a denser place, down by the bones of its ancestors, the origin of the human body, seated by the cosmos. You have come to earth, your mother and father sent you there. You were carved in your house where duality is. So this is the Mother Earth. An ancient listens is the Zipactli, where this is the Mother Earth that's going to hold the whole earth, that's going to give like this. Well, it's holding, it's giving this hold. So an ancient lizard that holds the mainland, when there were only endless waters, the Zipactli perched on the waters to support the land. So in Tula, the Zipactli is down. This is a mural of Diego Rivera. He made it in front of his home. So Quetzalcoatl is like, he feels very bad because he drank this the mezcal, and he drank this, ate this meat. So he is very, very much ashamed, and so he goes from one place to the other and the last time they see him is in Tabasco. It's one of the routes where he's seen, where he gives also the cacao seeds, and from there he has never been seen. So it's sad that really we as Mexicans, we are more related to Tezcatlipoca, this shadow that we have in Mexico, than to Quetzalcoatl. So Quetzalcoatl is someone who is like very far. It's like Jesus in a way. And here we have also the sad, this part where he goes to Tabasco, to Nonalco. After being in Tula, he goes to Cacaxtla, and well, Julia has shown like certain images of Cacaxtla. That's why I put this. The calendar of the conquest for the ancient Mexicans. The calendar gave other rituals associated with the cycles of time, the agriculture and commercial activities. And here we have both the female Venus and the male Venus. We have here both of them in this. So I do not know if I have still a little more time or it's okay with it. I only want to address this because I think this is interesting for Mexicans. So for Mesoamerican believed in double nature of time and space. So we have the anecumen and we have the ecumenus. So it's more or less like also with the Greeks that we also have this. So here it's like this part, superior and ecumenical scope, ecumenic scope, is where we are going to have the gods and the people, the same as in like Greece or the myths of Greece, the same. And then we have this underground where the underworld is. And for the shamans, usually they have to go to a different, the human levels of the thanatomorphosis and that of the shaman. So they are going to have to encounter with two mountains, the serpent, the alligator that's at the last, the valleys, the seven cliffs, the obsidiana winds, the crossing of the river where you're eaten by the jaguars, place without streets and exits. The Tezcatlipoca is related to the jaguar in Mexico. So, well, this is what I wanted to share with you. I hope I didn't take too much time. And well, Mesoamerican magic and divinations are part of their worldview that separates time and space from creation. They conceived a permanent flow of the will of the gods. They imagined the unity between divine substances and perceptible dying matter. Indigenous thinking is very implicit. You know something when you feel it. Westerns know things, but they don't feel them. So that's the huge difference with the Mesoamerican and the Mayan cosmogony. So, well, I hope I didn't take too much time of yours.
Just enough. Thank you. Thank you, Ursula. Wow, I mean, amazing to hear about that. And of course, I think we could dive into this for 3 hours or more because it's
Yes,
such a complex story and mythology, and wow. Wow. And you have sent me stuff about the Venus cycle according to, the ancient cultures in Mexico. But there is so much reminiscence of this story of Inanna going into the underworld and meeting, being pulled apart and, all that kind of stuff, and facing the shadow. That's so interesting. The
Is
Black
that
Mirror.
related to the equinox?
yes,
the-
definitely, because at the
Venus and the sun?
yes, definitely, because at the equinox is when we see the descent of the serpent.
Yeah.
So the serpent's coming down every year, regardless of what Venus is doing.
Yes, here, yes, it's like I have many more, but
Here we see the serpent.
here's the
Yeah.
serpent of the equinox, and it's always related with the 21st of March,
Yeah.
2-3 days, and also in September, but usually September is raining season. And we also have the lunar equinox there. And during the sunrise on June 20th and on the sunrise on December,
Mm.
you only can see one wall of the pyramid.
Mm.
So it's very much related to
Yeah.
Venus too, because Kukulkan, here's Kukulkan too, he is descending. So for the Mayans, the descent of Kukulkan, it meant like more related even to nature, to the universe, to the cosmos, to things that go beyond. So there were a little difference. Kukulkan also had his brother like the Tezcatlipoca, but it wasn't like the opposite that we can see with Quetzalcoatl and Tula. Quetzalcoatl and Tula, there are the opposites, the same as with Inanna and Ereshkigal. There we have like the opposite forces like fighting each other and things like that. Not so much in the Mayan cosmogony, but in the Mayan cosmogony, this was a very important time where they were related to transformation, evolution, things like that.
I want to
The
show
interesting-
just
Oh,
a
sorry.
quick
Yeah.
photo. If you don't mind, Ursula, I'm going to
Yes, so
change.
Gemini Brad has a video he made when he was in Tulum with a retreat. You can ask
So
him.
this is Tula. You remember we were there
Okay.
for the Day of the Dead. And there's one thing about Tula, it's an amazing temple, and all the history, mythology is palpable. But when we left Tula and we were just by the gates and we talked to one of the vendors there, they started to tell us that just the night before, there were visitors from other places. And, you talk to someone who sells you sodas and they casually speak about frequent visitations from other, other dimensions. And there's
Right.
a video you can see on my YouTube channel if you search for Tula, where he shares that story, which is
Right.
They
Wow.
they don't even know how these big stones were built of with a photo of
Yeah.
Maurice. They don't know how they carried them or
Right.
what happened. So they say that it wasn't like humans who did them, like people.
That's
So
so true. Many
many
ancient
rock,
rock
yes,
places around the
yes,
world. Yeah.
these are huge. It's huge columns.
Mm.
Very difficult. So they are even in the Discovery Channel. You can search for Tula and the story of Tula. This,
Okay.
what I showed you here, is not that much that you can find it that much, but it's the story of the whole, how they found it, how they discovered it. So that's amazing. It was burned down. That's why all many of well, the temples or the stones are not there anymore. But well, thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Ursula. Yeah, sorry, we have to keep going because the Nadiya won't then be able to join us back in and stuff. But it's totally fascinating. I just wanted to add that because of the equinox, the serpent, going down into the earth during the equinox, happens every year. But with Venus retrograde at the equinox, is an 8-year pattern, right? Or in Aries, let's say. But the pattern for Venus to be so close to an equinox retrograde, therefore conjunct the sun 2 days after the equinox, which will also get closer in the next 8 years, is a 251-year cycle, right? So this does not happen with Venus at the equinox, only every 251 years. So that's what makes this equinox incredibly special, right?
Have the year of the serpent too.
Oh, yes, in the year of the snake. Yes, of course. Now, I'm trying to move my slides, but they're not moving. So let me start that again. What is going on? Oh, here we go. Now we go. So look, just before we go into the details of the equinox chart for this year, let's just have a little quick recap of last year's equinox. Maurice, we had the moon opposite Pluto, and we were all looking at that going, well, it's going to be quite a volatile year. I think it's lived up to its name, and especially how it's kind of finished in the last few months with that Leo moon. I mean, Mars went retrograde over that moon, didn't it? So, and this is where we saw so much sort of, ramp up, especially in the USA and, geopolitics around the world. Yeah.
And it's the same moon as Israel's chart.
Right.
4 degrees Leo. So yeah, that was also a hot spot, obviously.
Yeah. And no planets were retrograde, which is really interesting. And this time there's Mars and Venus and Mercury retrograde. And the other big thing was, of course, the Saturn-Venus conjunction, which, heralded a, difficult year for many. And Ceres squaring the nodes. Now, Ceres has a lot to do with, let's say, underworld experiences, in a sense of losing homes, losing families, and we've seen a lot of that. And Ceres was also out of bounds all of last year, so the signatures were pretty intense when we look back, right? So anything you want to add?
The nodes were also there, so it wasn't like today. It's also an eclipse season. And the eclipse was in, Aries Libra, which quite often brings power struggles and call for liberation and the need to basically, the activism for justice and independence. So it was And I'm going to touch on this also from a Mercury point of view.
Yep.
A year where there were a lot of protests in many different parts of the world.
And that continues. It's really ramping up, isn't it, as well? So this is the equinox chart, again, set for 0 Aries. We will see different parts of the planet as we go. But, you know, the Sun, Neptune coming together, you know, has been coming through the cardinal points closer and closer over the last year, especially, and will continue, so that, you know, every cardinal ingress, we've got, you know, a connection to Neptune, or a square to Neptune opposition, and then Saturn over the next coming months as well, joining for the cardinal ingresses. So, you know, this kind of, let's say, energy is not over in a sense, although Neptune will be going back and forward, you know, into Pisces and stuff as well. So it's an interesting, you know, dynamic to think about.
If you know, Neptune moves into Aries on March 30th this year, and it's going to be, you know, Neptune at 29 Pisces and then Mercury at 0 Aries. But Mercury's retrograde, right? So what is it so important also to always look at Neptune and Mercury is that they're the rulers of the nodes.
Right.
And so, you know, modern ruler, you can also look at Jupiter for the ruling north node planet. But the fact that they're conjunct and that they keep changing sign between 0 degrees Aries and 29 Pisces, forward, back, is extremely relevant, because that's the seeding degree of the zodiac. That's the conception and the birthing time. So these planets circling around, you know, through their retrograde motion and rulers of the node really are anchoring some kind of new consciousness, new patterns that we may not fully understand right now. You know, we may kind of see that coming.
And I think this you know, this 0 point being so activated by Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde, that begins this, you know, this passage, let's say, and relates to what, you know, the transformation that we're going through during this time, as Ursula's, you know, mythology showed us as well, you know, from ancient times, when the planets disappear, you know, into the sun, they're transformed or transmuted to rise again in a, you know, a new form. And this is happening with so many things right now. I did look back at Venus and Mercury retrograde being together for an equinox. And as I was saying, for Venus star point to happen so close to an equinox is 251 years. So I looked back 251 years to find if Mercury was retrograde, and I couldn't find it. You know, it's in Taurus, or it's back in Pisces, or Venus is in Pisces. They're not together in this phase, like at, you know, before the sun, or let's say the balsamic phase of their retrogrades before they sort of move through to morning stars. I haven't found one for 500 years. So to be so close. So, and again, that takes a lot of looking. So, but knowing that I'm looking for a star point and then trying to find Mercury in that position was my key. So just to I think that is just so significant for these two, let's say, inner planets to be so together in this moment as well.
And they retrograded at the same degree. They both started at 9 degrees Aries.
Yeah.
They're retrograde. They're both moving, you
Where
know,
the eclipse will be.
where the eclipse will be. So that 9-degree Aries is so, you know, hot. And they both retrograde into Pisces, and they both kind of cross the North Node.
And back to Saturn.
And back to Saturn. So we saw what happened when Venus was on the first pass on the North Node, you know, a few weeks ago. and there was this whole tariff war with Mexico and Canada, and Venus has to do with the economy.
Yeah.
Now it's retrograde, and we see what's going on also with the economy and with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What will present itself as she comes back and stations near Saturn, you know, what will pull through, or what will be kind of like locked, and you know, they know that's not going to happen, or things will change. So it's very variable during these retrogrades of the inner planets, isn't it? I remember years ago, there was a Mercury retrograde in Pisces. It was in 2020, just as COVID was kind of coming up. And I can't remember which astrologer said it, but like, if we look back at this Mercury retrograde we just had, the world just changed. You know, like the world completely changed. And so these are the kind of things that, you know, we can kind of, you know,
Yeah.
go, okay, what's still to change? Mercury just went retrograde in a sense. So then we look at the moon. Sorry,
Yeah. One of the things, I mean, go through the list, and then I'll
Okay,
recapture
sure.
something.
Of course, the moon is very important in an ingress chart, and it's in Sagittarius, so ruled by Jupiter in Gemini, which is then sort of, what do you call it, ruled by Mercury in Aries, that's retrograde, which is, you know, with rulerships, we go down the line, and this one, and we stop if there's what do we call it, a rulership, right? But nothing's in their rulership, so we keep going in this kind of chaotic circle.
But it
Right,
ends
so
with Mars moon.
well,
You know?
Mars, moon, but then back to the moon, back
Yeah.
to Jupiter, back, you know, like it's like this. And same with the sun. Sun is ruled by Mars in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, and we go back,
Yeah.
like, so everything's just kind of very fluid, very moving, nothing solid, determined. That's how I'm kind of seeing that. But the important thing is the moon is out of bounds in this chart. And I think it was last year as well. And that's because we are in the lunar standstill kind of years, right? Which is actually peaking right after the equinox as well. So this is like 28 degrees, 43. I mean, it's like it's moved up. I've got a graph of it later, but just to understand, and I remember speaking about this at the Capricorn equinox, that we are in these extreme times, these extreme sort of moments where even the moon is like, you know, completely in its journey every 2 weeks out of bounds, like as far as it goes, and peaking at this equinox. So, or like it peaks when it's at 29 Sagittarius, so a day and a half after this, you know, after this moon in Sagittarius. So Mars is squaring Chiron, and I think we can all feel that. And Mars is still in its shadow and returning to a very important degree, which I'll show you in a minute, which is 23 degrees of Cancer, and Saturn sextile Uranus. So there's something very much shifting with that sextile as well, or being formed, that maybe we are not so clear about. Yes.
Well, I think it has to do also, you know, the Saturn and the Uranus in Taurus. Saturn has to do with what we had as references, what was solid, what, you know, the rock. And Saturn in Pisces has already eroded many structures, and things that we thought were reliable are suddenly not, you know, beginning from governmental jobs and everybody's fired, to Bitcoin, you know, challenging gold. So all the standards are being questioned, and especially this sextile, because Uranus in Taurus pushes towards cryptocurrency, you know, alternative, decentralized currency. And now Trump, you know, has bought a lot of Bitcoin for the United States and wants to create a reserve of Bitcoin, which could either compare to gold or, you know, replace gold. Who knows? But there's something being really challenged between the old order of Saturn and the new order of Uranus, as far as, you know, currencies, you know, will the dollar hold as a standard? Will gold remain the standard? All these are in the balance.
Yeah. And then we think about Neptune going into Aries, going, well, we can't expect things to be the same at all, as we go forward. So, gosh. And then these zero crossing points. Just remembering when Uranus crossed zero Aries back in March 2011, Jupiter crossing zero Aries 3 times in 2022, when the Queen died and there were 3 changes of government, just as an example. In the UK, zero Aries, of course, it was a tsunami that happened exactly just like a few hours beforehand. Neptune at zero Pisces, of course, not zero Aries, but the last time Neptune changed signs, we had the oil Gulf disaster, right? Didn't we?
I mean, we had Fukushima,
Yeah,
and
that was the Uranus Aries into Aries.
but Neptune at zero Pisces.
Yes, that's what I'm just saying. Zero
But
Pisces,
yeah,
Neptune was, that was 2000 and,
no, that was
sorry.
March 2011. I think it's a mistake here, August,
No,
because
no,
I think
Uranus went into Aries March 2011, and I remember it really well because
yeah.
it was my birthday. And Jupiter in Aries, but Neptune at zero Pisces was it happened a few times, but I think it was February 2012 when the Gulf
Okay.
disaster, the oil thing happened. And then this year, as we look at it, we had the nodal axis crossing this point, Venus, Mercury, Neptune, Saturn, Ceres over, coming in and out, well, for this equinox and then over the next year. Jupiter will square this 0 point at zero Cancer in June, and probably a few times. Does Jupiter go back to Gemini? I can't even remember. Or
No.
just moving forward? No,
Yeah.
yeah. And then we have this, because of the 0 point, we've got Pluto sextile at zero or around zero Aquarius. And then when Uranus moves into zero Gemini, also in July, we've got this,
Yeah.
incredible sextile going on as well. So these 0 points are really kicking off, aren't they?
Absolutely. And what also is interesting, if you go back to the chart,
Yep.
The moon in Sag with all those fire energy is very much about expansion, a climate of entrepreneurial ventures and having dreams, wanting more. And we see also with what's going on with the change of leadership in the United States that we're shifting into expansionism, from a time of contraction, from a time where we were careful about are we over consuming, are we destroying the planet, should we be careful, to a time where we're like, let's buy new land and let's get this,
Let's take over the world.
let's
It's
take over the
ours.
world. And the Arctic routes opening up, offering new passages. So there's something about that moon that opposing Jupiter that also brings an element of optimism and excess. And then you have the Saturn on the North Node, which is all about accountability and all about, paying the bills. And are you really, can you afford all the things that you're saying?
Mm,
So this
mm,
fire and all these planets moving into fire, Aries and Gemini, and is energy going out. We're back to the booming phase, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
interesting.
Well, again, when, too much booming and what happens, then there's a crash. So
Yeah,
being
yeah.
careful in our own lives, that optimism is very good to, let's say, harbor in these times, but being careful of overdoing it is very cautionary in this chart,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's really showing. So,
Which is the out of bound moon as well.
Yeah,
You know, you
yeah.
mentioned it's a
Oh,
Sag moon, which
yeah.
brings promise for positive stuff, but it's also out of bound. It can be excessive.
And
And then
Mars is still out of bounds too. Forgot to write
and
that in. Mars is still out of bounds till April the 6th. So,
Mars and Mars is the ruler of all these Aries planet. And
mhm.
Mars will rule, I think as we get into our Neptune in Aries description, throughout the time that Neptune will be in Aries, we have to track Mars
Yeah,
because Mars is going to constantly reflect on what's going on with Neptune. So now it's in Aries, in Cancer. We speak about security, we speak about nationalism. Do
yeah,
we feel safe,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, I always remember the combination of, let's say, Neptune and Mars can do amazing things, right? Like amazing feats that would never be dreamed about, so it's really significant or important for us to sort of nurture our dreams, because don't give up on thinking that this can't be done or can't happen, because it takes that sort of that drive and that enthusiasm of Mars to really sort of, let's say, build a dream, or yeah, keeping that in mind so that we need to get the positives out of this as well, don't we?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. And I just want to bring in some midpoints, because look where the sun and moon midpoint are. Conjunct Pluto. Yeah, yeah. And so the sun and moon midpoint, of course, very important in any chart, or if you haven't looked at that. So coming together right on Pluto, how do we read that? Like, it just accentuates Pluto and its position at this point. And I think Pluto in Aquarius has really sort of puffed up that whole billionaire, like sort of psyche that is, circulating everywhere. Um, and maybe this is bringing down to earth maybe a bit more. I don't know.
Well, and it's the whole, Pluto brings both promise of growth and shadow. And so we're in this age of technology and this age of space exploration and this age also of community, where on the one hand we are ever connected and technology is speeding up so quickly. And then we see the threats of, abuse of that and abuse of AI and, too
Mm,
many satellites in the sky and all the debris, we call that the Gulf
the
of,
rockets crashing.
yeah, the Gulf of crashing Elon Musk's rockets. And, we've seen also a lot of air flights and accidents with airplanes
Mm,
with this movement of Pluto in Aquarius.
yeah.
So I think it's always when I speak of Pluto in Aquarius is you want to go high to the sky, Aquarius, you have to root down to the underworld with Pluto. Like you need to grow both to the depth and to the height. Otherwise, it doesn't hold.
It's like that balance that Ursula was saying, the cosmos is in the head, and
Exactly.
we've got to ground it to the earth. Yeah, it's also, melding together. And then the other midpoint that's significant is Mars and Ceres,
Mm.
right? And this is significant because anything at the mid or fixed degrees is 45 degrees from the world point, right? So that therefore we can see that the 0 point is very much connected to Mars
Sure.
and Ceres.
And
And I've
it's
got a bit,
it's
sorry,
it's all about food, and it's all
food
about food security,
prices. Yeah,
prices, economy,
sorry.
eggs.
I want to go
So
backward. Why doesn't it go backward? Oh no. Oh, here we go. Sorry. So, anyway, just because of, I just want to bring in the world points. Some of us might not be aware, but of course, the world points are known as the 0 point of Aries, but also the other cardinal points. So the world tree axis is 0 Cancer and 0 Capricorn. The equinox points east and west are the 0 Aries and 0 Libra. But when we looked at the midpoints here, and you can, these are like it's the same kind of energy, let's say, but the midpoints on what we call a Cosmo 90-degree dial helps you see the midpoints much easier. And the Cosmo dial is, if you've got a circle, right, and you fold it in half, you fold it in half again, and you keep folding it, then you put a nick into the little piece you've got left, and that will show how everything is connected by midpoint, right? And so it's something to get to know, and I'm not going to teach it now, but it's just what I want to show us is how many things are connected to the world point in this coming year, and through some world leaders and stuff. So the way you read a Cosmo dial is that all the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, are all represented in the first 30 degrees of what we call the 90-degree dial. So it's only 90 degrees. So it's almost like everything's folded up into a quarter of the 360 circle, right? And then it's kind of expanded. 30 degrees of fixed, 30 degrees of mutable. So if something's conjunct, let's say Venus and the North Node are conjunct in Pisces, they're going to show up together here, okay? And all the planets in mutable signs will show up here, all the planets in cardinal signs will show up here, and so on. And so from across the dial, we also have things that will be exactly opposite the world point. So if this is the world point, 45 degrees of 15 degrees of fixed, so that's 15 degrees of fixed will be a world point, right?
Mhm.
And let's keep going here. And then 22.5 degrees of cardinal is a world point. And then we can keep folding, but let's just keep it to the 8th harmonic. And then we fold it again, and we've got 11 degrees of cardinal, 5 degrees of fixed. And you get to know this, and you kind of can't stop seeing it. Do you know what I mean? It's like learning the Venus star points or where eclipses are for a year. So opposite the 22 degree, oh gosh, why isn't that? 22.5, opposite is 7.5 mutable, right? So if you see something at 22 cardinal, and then you've got something at 7 mutable, you know that they're crossing over. You know that they're in a midpoint structure together. And if we remember what happened in 2020 at 22 degrees of Capricorn, it was right there. We had Saturn, Pluto, the Sun, Ceres, and Mercury kind of ushering the COVID era, right? And lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. So that's just kind of a reminder of how we see this kind of operating in world charts and so on. And so therefore in this equinox chart, again, we've got Sun, Neptune, Venus, Mercury, and Saturn crossing these points now and over coming weeks and months. We have Chiron sitting at the world point as well, like at 22, and then coming into it as well. And if we know the USA has got Chiron return going on at the moment. Then we've got the Mars Ceres, again, as I was saying, fixed 15 degrees fixed is a world point, Mars and Ceres midpoint. We've got Uranus coming up to a world point in coming months, so over these next month or so, Uranus will hit its world point. And if you can go back in this to see the world points again, as I've structured them here, as you can see, 2016 fixed, 15 fixed, and so on. And then we've got Mars coming up to 22.5 cardinal as well. And this is really interesting because the Trump inauguration happened when Mars was retrograde at this point, right? On the, what was it, 9th of January or whatever date that was. Mars was retrograde at this world point. It's coming back to there. So I'm really kind of thinking there's going to be some repercussions of this, like a culmination of energy of what's been happening. And then we have and yeah, returns here on the eclipse. Sorry, it's there on the eclipse at 9 degrees of Aries. And then of course Neptune enters Mars's sign. And then look at where Pluto is heading, not quite this year or next year, but towards the end of next year, it's coming to 5 fixed, which is also one of these points. So we've got a lot being pinged off by this midpoint structure. So Bill Meridian did a webinar with the CIA just recently, and reminded us of all these things. So mundane astrologers are very much looking at these points, and a lot easier to learn it by the dial. So and now these are the world leaders that have let's say natal positions very much connected to world points. So Zelensky has Uranus at 15 degrees of fixed, and his Sun and Venus at 5 degrees fixed. So again, a world point that I've just showed you. The USA has its nodes at 6 fixed. In this dial stuff, you keep things very tight orbs, but it's close enough, I think. 6 degrees fixed showing that. Donald Trump has Saturn at 23 cardinal and Uranus at 18 mutable. So you can see him playing out his kind of story in the world big time at the moment. Putin has Neptune and Mercury at 21 cardinal, so very much in that area. Netanyahu has Sun, Moon, midpoint at 23 cardinal, and his ascendant as 7 mutable. What's his ascendant? Gemini? No, I can't remember. Anyway. Oh, Sag, yeah, right. So he's right there as well. And then unproclaimed leader Elon Musk has his nodes at 15 degrees of fixed, his Venus at 18 mutable, and his Sun at 5 cardinal. So when you look at these structures, like again, back here, all these degrees are all in these big leaders that are in our kind of showcase at the moment, leading the world right there. So it's interesting.
Absolutely.
So and then this is just the dates for the peak of the major lunar standstill, and as we can see, this one here, the 22nd of March, is the most extreme, just by 3 minutes of arc, but it's still, we could say it's the most extreme. So again, very extreme, very definite, determined times going on. Now, one way we can look at what's happening in the world through the equinox chart is, of course, where we would do individual charts for any kind of capital or nation. But when we look at the ACG map, so the timing of the exact ingress, we can see where things are rising and where things are setting. And what we can see, let's say through, let's start with this area here, through the Ukraine and through Europe, we've got Mars and we've got Saturn and the nodes up on the midheaven. We've got Mars ascending through the area. So places like Tehran have Mars right on the ascendant, as we can see it here. We've got Venus and Mercury on the midheaven as well. So this is how you can kind of go, oh, I want to look closer. I want to look closer into this because I can see Mars rising through Tehran and then and through Moscow, right? We've got Ceres kind of rising through Kiev, or on the midheaven through Kiev. We have Saturn on the MC also through Israel and Gaza. It looks a little bit more to the right from that, but with ACG maps, you can have like 300 kilometers or 500 kilometers representing about 5 degrees to be still very much, sitting on the midheaven, 9th or 10th house or so on. Then through the USA, we've got the midpoint of Mars and Ceres going through the Gulf of Mexico with the midpoint of the Sun and Moon. We've got Mars on the descendant. And we've got the Moon right through this area as well. So, you know, this sort of tells us, you know, what the kind of energy is. Although where's Pluto gone? Pluto is with, oh, Pluto's
United
with the
States.
Sun and the Moon. Sorry, yeah, it's rising. So Pluto's hidden, see over here, Pluto's hidden in this midpoint that I've got on here. So Pluto rises through Washington, D.C., Pluto and the midpoint rising through DC and then crossed by the Moon. We've got Jupiter going through the UK. There's quite, you can look at this chart sort of, you know, throughout the year and you'll see it sort of activated in so many ways. Through Australia, we've got Chiron with, is that Mars through there? Also Mars, you know, the big repair happening after the recent cyclone. I mean, there's been tornadoes through this area here, which Mars and Ceres, Mississippi and all that, yeah, as well. Israel is 2 Cancer ascendant, right? So what am I going? Yeah,
No,
because
it's
Mars is in Cancer, so Israel 2 Cancer ascending, and that's really interesting because the star point is 2 degrees of Aries, so squaring that. So again, so many ways you can kind of dive deeper into this, and it's probably harder to see on this computer screen, but you know, take a screen grab or look at it closer or in your own
so just
software.
to clarify it for everyone,
Yes.
this basically represents where the equinox chart is going to be strongest. You know, in the equinox chart, which part of the world are going to capture some of the dynamics, the Mars or the Jupiter, etc. So
Yeah.
this
So
gives
if
us a clear indication. You see so many lines going through the Middle East there.
Yeah, but let's just say if you followed Mars line, the unbroken lines are where it's ascending, and then it changes to where it's descending, right? Mars just to follow. So this is how you do it, or following the Pluto line, you know, where it's ascending and then where it's going to descend over here. So we've got Mars kind of opposite Pluto in a sense, right? On different sides of the planet. And then I always look at the geodetic map, and for those of you that don't understand the geodetic map, this is the same time for the equinox, but the geodetic map is like slotting in something into a grid. And the grid the grid begins of 0 Aries at Greenwich, right? So we've got the line down there, and so all the Aries and Pisces planets, of course, are showing up there on the midheaven. So that every place on the planet has a particular zodiacal coordinate, right? Like Melbourne's got an 18 degrees Sagittarius ascendant with a 28 Leo MC. Sedona will have its own coordinates, right? And so so you put in, like you can put in your natal chart or whatever into the geodetic map, and you will see things changing slowly over time, except for the moon kind of moving through, right? And most recently, I kind of, there was the not the earthquake, the cyclone off the coast of Brisbane, and we can see that Ceres and Jupiter were kind of closer in there. It was a few weeks ago, and the moon had moved through, and I was looking at the geodetic map going, well, I wonder if the cyclone, because the moon will move through, the moon was there when they were anticipating the worst, and as the moon moved off there, it weakened, right? And you know, so I've been watching this, and it's just so fascinating. Anyway, these are the kind of things you look at. The moon moves through an area, but let's have a look at Tehran. Tehran has, and this whole area where the US is now, you know, targeting Yemen, is Uranus right through there. Okay, and that's been there because it's at 24. What is it? 24 Taurus. 24 Taurus is the MC of Tehran in the geodetic map. Okay. Israel is like 5, or Jerusalem's 5 degrees Taurus. Moscow's 5 degrees Taurus. All this area is 5 degrees Taurus, and many of the world leaders have got 5 degrees fixed. As I showed you before, 5 degrees fixed kind of energy in their chart somehow. So this has just become such a sort of fascination for me. Then we've got that we had a tanker collision where all this Neptune was, and conglomeration, Venus retrograde in this area, crossed by Pluto as well. And we had the tanker collision. We've had the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico, the astronauts returning in this whole area, a tornado going through in this whole area. So that's been such a hot spot. And look where everything is, like all this Aries, Pisces. So Aries and Pisces rise through that area, okay? They're not on the MC, they're actually on the ascendant, right? And if you want to know more about geodetic maps, I've got some classes at the CIA, but it's just totally fascinating. I love it. Washington has Chiron and Eris going through there, and has done since, well, the last year. So through the election, through the inauguration, Chiron's going through the US on that spot. So for example, the USA has their sun at 13 Cancer. On the geodetic map, 13 Capricorn is on the MC, right? And 23 degrees of Aries rises. Now, that's another thing about, remember what I was saying about 23, Mars at 23 Cardinal coming up for the eclipse, that Mars will be squaring right on the USA. So again, many things to keep following here. Mars is going, Cancer rises through this area, so we've got Mars there as well. And as we know, what is it, Serbia and Hungary have had really big uprisings at the moment. And of course, the whole NATO alliance is very sort of shaky about what to do. And then of course the eclipse. The eclipse over this area.
NATO is an Aries entity.
Right, yes. I've got their chart somewhere, but let's just see. Is Nadiya back? No.
Yeah, she's back.
She is. Okay. So this is my last one for now. So so the eclipse, because Nadiya is going to talk about the eclipse and into Neptune in Aries. So this is now the eclipse that actually shadows Russia and over to the USA. The eclipse actually will rise over the USA. There's the sun rising there, and then go through all over Europe and over to Russia. And we can look at the Saros cycle of this eclipse series and look back to the years of 2007, 1989. Of course, that rings a bell with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction happening there. Back to 1971, 53, 35, and 1917. So we're in this eclipse cycle series of whatever Saroses are happening this year to take us back to those years. And then also last week, Bill Meridian did an eclipse webinar for us and just reminded us, now, this is the Saros that comes, the next one at 29 Virgo later in the year on the 21st of September. And how much it is connected to the Russian USA, alliances, Cold Wars, and so on over the years. So, and then the Saturn-Neptune cycle, which is 36 to 37 years, locking into every second version of that. As we know, Saturn-Neptune happened at the Berlin Wall fall in 89, then 53, 52, and 1917 when the Russian Revolution started. So it's this cycle of Saros and eclipses very much linked into the Saturn-Neptune cycles. And so again, something else that's really showing us in the thick of things. This is a chart for Tehran that Maurice asked for to be added here.
Yeah. Well, you see again, very graphically, that Mars is an important indicator because we're talking about the Aries equinox, we're talking about Neptune moving to Aries. And so to see Mars rising in that area does speak about the challenges of war and the challenges of destabilizing the local regime. And with Saturn, Neptune coming together, we can anticipate that there will be the crumbling, because Neptune disintegrates Saturn. And so the structures start to fall down. And, we don't know to what extent, we don't know, when exactly, but we see that this equinox chart is quite specific, its exact degree in Tehran. Now, another thing I wanted to highlight, speaking of the moon in Sag opposing Jupiter, it's also a lot about migrations, changes. If we look at the nodal axis in Virgo Pisces, which has to do with employment and has to do with employment and the economy as well, then you have the migration axis of Sag, Gemini, the ruler of the moon is opposing it. There seem to be that, there will be a lot of ideological, a lot of religious, ideological fervor, people getting all excited about their beliefs and about their religion, but also a lot of migration and cross-cultural changes because possibly of employment opportunities or employment losses. So that's another thing to, look at when we speak about tariff wars and, who can travel and where are the bans, Saturn on the North Node banning travel. How is that going to affect international affairs, immigration, migration, not just in the United States, but, all over. So when, looking back at Julia's charts, if we see that this Saturn is so strategic, look where Saturn is on the geodetic map. Where is it rising? Where is it on the MC? Look where the moon is to see where the migrations can be more amplified. So that's
Well, it goes
all.
right over Gaza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will obviously see a lot of changes in Gaza, not, what's happening now, the breaking the ceasefire, but we see that with all this Aries energy, the Palestinian cause is likely going to be amplified as far as calls for independence, Aries. So yeah.
1917 was also when the Balfour Agreement happened, which was the first time the British Empire kind of said, oh, let's assign some land, take it from these people. So it's got that whole, that whole thing is so connected to what's happening now. Nadiya, welcome back. Your internet's back.
Well, thank you. Well, no, the internet is not on. It is still my phone data, but it just feels like there's a lot going on. But I'm like, I can do this. If anybody can do it, I've been doing this. I've been doing astrology. I can do astrology no matter what's going on around me. So let's do it. Yes.
That's okay. So Maurice, we can go back to things, but Nadiya has to go by a certain time.
Sure.
So let's go back to dear Nadiya. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Now you're going to talk about the eclipse and Neptune.
Where is my eclipse? Come on now, show yourself. Let me see here. Oh, here we go. So I've got a few charts here, ready to go, right? Fired up, ready to go. We got a bunch of charts here to talk about. Let me just first check in with everybody. How's everybody doing? There, I hope you can't hear any background noise. Can you? Is there background noise happening?
We hear your dog barking.
You hear, sorry?
I'm joking. I'm joking. Go ahead.
Okay. You can hear me okay? Is
Yeah,
it
yeah,
only my
perfect.
voice coming through? Okay, that is my no background noise. Great. I have a good mic for a reason because I never know where I find myself. But I just want to say a very quick hi to everybody who's here. I love to stay in touch with you guys in the chat to see how you're doing and how you're feeling. So feel free to share some of your own perceptions and ideas as we co-create this part of my presentation together. So we've got really exciting skies coming up, right? Big moves in the sky is something that I really like to say. And that is because we are on the precipice of a very important solar eclipse. And there are a few things that make this eclipse special. So
Just
one is,
keep the mic
yeah.
just a little away because you're
Okay.
coming distorted.
There we go. Thank you, Maurice. Be my production person. Hold on a second. Let me see
It's perfect. We
what's
hear you
happening
well.
here. Okay. So, okay, here we go. Let's jump in. I'm very happy to see all of you. Let me put my mic down here, my beautiful sensitive Amazon mic. Let's go for it. So we've got this huge eclipse coming up. This is going to be the last eclipse that we see in the energy of Aries for a while. It won't be until 2032 that we are going to have another eclipse in the sign of Aries. But there's something else to take into consideration here as well. We all know, I think some of us have really been looking forward to, in some cases with great enthusiasm, to the fact that we are going to have these planets moving back and forth between two segments of the sky. And that is the energy of Pisces into Aries, and then back into Pisces. And then next year, in time for Valentine's Day, we are going to have an exact conjunction of two big planets in the sign of Aries. You guys know which planets I'm talking about, right? Let me know in the chat if it's coming to your mind, because it is these divine moves that are speaking profoundly to our changing times and signs. I have been saying since the start of the decade, the world that we start the decade with will be a very different world that we end the decade with. And it is this shift from an energy of pure diving into water of Pisces and this brand new sense of a fresh beginning for all of us in our lives, yes, but also as a collective, what that just might be. It's like we're on the precipice of understanding that and finding that out. But it's the big planets of Saturn and Neptune that are going to be changing signs. Saturn, you get Saturn changing signs about once every 2.5 decades. But of course, as it's been mentioned, Neptune happens a lot more rarely. It takes about 150 years or so for Neptune to change or to return to the sign that it was in. It takes about 13 to 15 years to move from one sign to another. And so this move right now, this sense of us moving back and forth between Pisces, Aries, this is a time that is not to be repeated very likely in our lifetimes. Even though I know, and I've been saying since I'm a little kid, that I'm going to live to 150 years old, still, I probably am not going to see this Aries, Pisces, Aries energy again. Now, all of that is to say, huge planets shifting into a new sign, into a new energy. But what is that going to mean for you in your own life, in your own path? Well, it is right now that Mercury and Venus, and also this eclipse, is going to start to point the way as to what your personal fresh start just might be for you. I think it's fascinating that we're having this mirroring effect, if you will. Whereas, yes, we know big planets are shifting, but the fact that Mercury has been preparing us, helping us to understand what is Mercury, it's mind, right? It's understanding, it's the thought processes coming together. And so much of what it means to be human is to understand how we think about ourselves and each other. But also Venus. Venus is a big part of this as well. And so it isn't just about where the collective soul and faith is taking us, what adventures the ways in which our faith might be manipulated might take us, which can be one face of Neptune, of course, not the only face, but it's also about where our heart's going to take us collectively and personally. And by personally, I mean for you, where's your heart going to take you? Where's your mind going to take you? Now, by their very nature, Piscean energy has a certain, for lack of a better way of putting it, a certain passivity to it, right? It kind of goes with the flow. It goes along for the ride. And Pisces understands itself as part of a universal one. It is connected to everyone and everything. And in that way, it is rightly considered an archetype that is profoundly spiritual, because this is the essential truth of what it is to be alive, is that each and every one of us, this idea of us being individuals can in one sense be an illusion, but it's also how it is that ultimately we know the best of ourselves when we can feel each other, when we bring that level of empathy that we not only see ourselves in each other, but we know ourselves as each other. But Aries energy, this is pure fire. This is cardinal. This is about your will. You deciding what direction you want to go in. You deciding on whatever your impetus is, that most immediate feeling, and trusting it and going with it. Now, that can also be called impulsive. Not always the wisest strategy, but I think that's part of what we're learning here right now as a collective is trust your impulses. Yes, have a zest for life and living and enthusiasm for all things, but also don't forget that there is a divine connection, and that perhaps by balancing the two, we might just know ourselves as even better and even more. So now here we are on the precipice of this big eclipse, an Aries eclipse. And I want you to look at this because the eclipse is at 9 degrees of Aries. Okay. What is happening the following day after the eclipse? Neptune. Neptune changes signs. And what that means is Neptune is at the very end of the sign of Pisces. This is what astrologers call an anaretic degree, meaning that the traditional astrologers would use a certain phrasing like crisis, right? But we, as modern astrologers, we use phrasing like culmination, conclusion, but also concentration as well. It is a concentrated degree in the sky. It represents a moment where all the lessons that we've walked over the course of the last 30 degrees of that sign, they all come together in a much more obvious way, very much on the sleeve, as they say. But here's another factor to consider. This is the very last degree of the very last minute of the last degree of the entirety of the zodiac. It isn't just that we're getting 2957, 2958, 2959 of Pisces, but the very next degree is 00 of Aries. Brand new cycle, brand new, larger 12 sign cycle, 360 degrees all the way around the zodiac. And we are approaching the very last degree of the very last sign. And that makes this a moment when a lot is going to be stirring within us. A lot is likely to be rising within us at this time as well. And it can be characterized as emotion. But then consider at the same time, we're having this Aries solar eclipse, which is likely going to say to us, what are you crying for? What the heck? Why are you getting all caught up in this feeling, this thing, this empathy? What's really real? What do you really want? What direction are you going to go in? The energy of Pisces can remind us of our powerlessness, which is part of the sacred truth of being human. But Aries refuses to accept that. Aries is like, no, I have the power because I exist and I'm here right now. And so being able to find that right balance between empowerment and the power that comes from surrendering power is part of this tension that many of us are likely going to be feeling under the light of this eclipse. Now, I'm going to invite you to consider something else here as well. And that is Mercury went retro, right? Mercury went retro as of recently. And when Mercury went retro, I want you to look at this, 9 degrees. Mercury went retro at the exact same degree that this eclipse is taking place in. And in this way, I feel like there's such a powerful connection between whatever might be happening with us under the light of the eclipse that's taking place in 10 days from now, and what is happening for us right now as Mercury stood still at the end of last week and just began to go retrograde. As much as, again, Aries energy, go for it, fight, trust, have at it. The retrograde says, hold your horses, says, slow down a little bit. Is this really how you want to use your power? And not only that, it's about the power of mind that you're using here as well. I had an interesting experience not too long ago, and that was, I happened to be in Tokyo at the beginning of the year. If you watch me regularly, this might sound a little bit familiar. I was in Tokyo. I had a Bumble date set up before I even arrived. For those of you who don't know what that is, congratulations, you're doing very, very well in life. But for those of us who know, I had a Bumble date set up. I was very excited about meeting this person. And as soon as I arrived in Tokyo, I got very, very sick, very sick. And I remember there was a point about, I'd been in Tokyo at that point, maybe 36 hours or so. And I was literally in the middle of the night over the sink. Everything in me had already been expelled. Everything in me. And still my body was like, expel, expel. And I remember having this thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. Oh my God, I just want to die. And then I said, hey, no, I'm not going to die. I've got a lot left to do in this lifetime. Excuse me, brain, you are here for me. You are a tool for my soul, for my spirit, not the other way around. And then I started thinking about all the things I had yet to do in this lifetime. Like I'd promised myself I'd go to 50 countries before I turned 50. Well, I just did that last week. I was in Guatemala. That was my 50 countries. I was thinking about all kinds of things, and I went to sleep with that. By the time I got out of bed, dude was on a plane out of Tokyo. No Bumble date with that dude was going to be taking place. Maybe the universe saved me from that date. I don't know. But I say all this to say, this is Mercury. Mercury is mind. And I feel like part of the tension that could be arising for us right now with this week, with this Mercury retrograde, because a retrograde planet ultimately invites you to personalize its energy, to own its energy, to understand how that energy speaks to you and through you as well. I'm going to get a little meta here, okay? When you look at the sky and when you look at the chart, I'm going to invite you to consider how it is the planets that are the embodiment of the ancient gods. They are not the gods themselves, but they are representatives of the gods in the sky. And this, your chart, represents the moment of your first breath. And when you took that first breath, you became connected to everyone and everything. That first breath is very much coming into this space, into this life, preparing to take that first breath, right? That is very Piscean. And this idea of how the planets were connected to each other, it says something, it reflects something about how you are an embodiment of the gods. You are not just a reflection of them, but the gods know who they are as a result of the fact that you lived and you experienced that very planet and the unique way in which it wanted to come through you. You take your first breath, right? That is a very Aries thing. The breath itself is Aries. And that's where you begin the incarnation. And so all of us in some way, it's like we know we're beginning again. We know it's the start of something new, something fresh, even something exciting. We don't have patience, like Aries does not have patience, infamously, as an energy. We may not have patience anymore to hold off on our lives. And yet, there's still a need to remember that these sacred energies are a part of you. And if you reflect on them, then maybe you'll get a chance to use them wisely. So here we have Mercury going retrograde. I want to share a chart here. I know I'm kind of bulldozing through. I hope everybody, my co-hosts here are okay with me as well. But I want to share the chart of, well, look, just for giggles, Venus went retrograde, and Venus went retrograde at 10, okay? So this is an interesting thing to consider, right? Venus went retrograde at 10, which is not 9, which is not the eclipse degree, but it is still at that place where we're getting a feel for the energy. Is there love here? How committed are we to living a path of heart or not? What is our beginning going to look like? How committed are we to ensuring that whatever our own will, our own desires, our own empowerment, wherever it might take us, ultimately, there's also a sense of us still remembering that there's something else, more wise, more interconnected, that we can still tap into for wisdom. And have a look here, Mercury going direct. And I wanted to share this chart because I want you to consider what's happening here. This is Mercury going direct. A big part of this Venus retrograde and this Mercury retrograde is how these planets are going to be meeting Saturn, meeting Neptune, meeting the North Node. These are key signatures of this moment. And what that means is it isn't just about the contrast between what you feel, what you allow, what you're open to. It isn't just about the desire that you have to fight for your life and go out there and fight for what you want, you know, very Rocky Balboa. But whatever's happening now, it is part of a soul's desire, and we're not always aware of what that is. And what I mean is, one of my books called The Universe is Wise and Loving is about the nodes of the moon. And in this book, I talk about how the desire, the promises, the soul contract is what the nodes represent. And in particular, the North Node speaks to the contracts that you're moving towards fulfilling in this lifetime, where you come to own that energy more and more. But also, when we look at the North Node, where is it that key people or places, things, situations are coming in that ultimately become part of your journey in a more meta, larger sense, pulling you towards greater love and greater wisdom. And what is that greater love and greater wisdom? It is the energy of the divine. You can call it bliss. You can call it the gods, right? It is the pathway towards realizing and embodying how it is that you are a divine, unique expression of the ancient gods in this lifetime, in this incarnation, in this modern time. And so, as much as we've got endings, beginnings, endings, beginnings, we've also got these reminders coming in that sometimes take a little bit of intention to listen to. I don't think we're going to have to really bang down doors to try and figure it out. But what's happening now is a part of aligning us with a soul contract, collectively and individually as well. And as part of understanding those soul contracts we have with each other, with the collective, with ourselves, companies, this moment in history, whatever part of that you might play, it is one thing to feel it. That is where we are right now as a collective with the North Node in Pisces. We are to feel it and to know it on a level of soul. But it is another thing to live it, and the opportunity to live it, and to live it with clarity and intention, to make sure that that's the path you're actually on. I think that is a big part of what the larger lesson is over the course of these weeks. And with this eclipse energy in particular, it is all about how that lesson just might speak through you, might awaken for you in sometimes unexpected and surprising ways. But my hope is it's Aries energy, so it'll be refreshing as well. Okay, what do you think? What are your ideas? Because I know I just went in there like with my Aries energy, excuse me. I've got a lot of asteroids in Aries. I've got Jupiter in Aries, all in my 10th, hugging up in my 10th. So yeah. So yes, the moon, this 9 degrees of Aries is what we're looking at for this eclipse. And then it is Mercury that went retrograde at 9 degrees of Aries as well. Refreshing energy. I love it. Mm-hmm. So how's everybody doing? What's coming up for you guys as I share all this?
I'm just looking at that Mercury at 0 Aries. We talked about the cardinal point and the world point and how it crisscrosses with Neptune within a couple of hours. I think that's really, really significant on the world stage. And then I like
The
Nadiya
ruler
how
of the
it
node.
reminded us of our own kind of version of that, not just the collective, but our own sort of process and what we're going through at this time as well as really important. Sorry, Maurice, what did you say?
Well, that Mercury-Neptune, Mercury rules the
Yeah.
south node and Neptune rules the north node, and they are
Yes.
just on that
Swapping.
point. So something's going to be decided on that date, you know, those March 29 eclipse, Neptune moving into a new sign, and then Mercury moving to 29 Pisces the same time. It's just unbelievable. Like it's something,
Yeah,
you know,
and then
that's
Venus
so
in her
uncanny.
exaltation back in Pisces, can get a lot of perhaps what she wants, or reclaim or something like that, still retrograde. I mean, there's so much depth and richness in this amazing time we're going through.
Absolutely. And I love it was said that just now, I think it was Maurice who said something's going to be decided. And yeah, it's almost like we decide something and then we're like, wait a minute, did we do the right thing? Wait a minute, is this how we want to go with it? Because it isn't just that stuff. By stuff, I mean planets, big planets, personal planets are moving into Aries, but they're also going to retrograde back into Pisces. And then they're going to move back into Aries. And I think what's fascinating is, Saturn and Neptune get so close, right? In this larger dance that we have, especially this year, in terms of meeting in the sign of Aries, but they don't exactly get there to the minute until just before Valentine's Day of next year. And I think that is fascinating as well. Like this day that has cultural significance in some of the world, of course, not in all of the world, but it has this significance to it. And what is it? Love necessarily requires us to usually think about others, right? But it's all Aries. So it isn't just about thinking about others. It's about knowing yourself and being true to yourself in the process, perhaps as an act of greater understanding, greater love as well. We may come to understand that. Now, also possible, I'll just throw this out there because I think the day before Valentine's Day is what's called Galentine's Day, right? And that's supposed to be like for the girls to get together and tell each other how awesome they are, right? And so this is where apparently in parts of the world like China, Galentine's Day has become a higher, like more sales happen for Galentine's Day than for Valentine's Day now, because the girls are buying themselves stuff, they're buying each other stuff. And how interesting that that conjunction is going to be exact right on Galentine's Day. Look at that. It just might start something brand new for a lot of us out there.
Well, yeah, right. Fantastic. Well, there's a lot to look forward to. I think it's quite exciting, everything we're going through, and what we're seeing sort of changing in the world. We knew change had to happen, maybe not quite what we're seeing, but we've been, let's say, talking about this and encouraging shifts and changes for so long, so we're kind of in amongst it all, and I think it's really important to keep that vision of what it is that we would like to see in our lives or a better world. Like Aries is all about the eyes and the vision and seeing forward.
Wow.
So seeing forward as opposed to, so it's a very visionary, inspiring time, the Aries and the Pisces, right? We're digging deep back into the inspiration, letting things go, or, retrieving stuff with all these retrogrades going back there. But then also keeping that as the visionaries that we need to be, in these times. So that's my message.
Yeah. Well, I think with Aries, when I think of Aries energy, I think of impatience as well. And considering that we're going to have Pluto and Uranus in air signs, I mean, I just think that it's almost like there are technological advances that some of us are no longer willing to wait for. It's like, no, I want to teleport right now. This is not okay. get it together to figure it out. I saw a comedy routine just yesterday where the guy was making fun of how, because he did this routine just when Steve Jobs had passed away. And he said, all these people are like, oh, he changed the world. He changed the world. What? He told other people what to invent. That's what he did, according to this, this comedian who was making these jokes. And I thought to myself, yeah, we're already seeing examples of people like that, right? Already, who are like, no, it's not okay for us to wait a minute longer. This is what I want invented. Go about and invent it yesterday. And so it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing comes together, especially once we get to 2026. And we're going to have that grand sextile taking place. It's going to reach exact. And that is a huge, I mean, I just think it's a big turning point for humanity, a big one.
Yeah.
How we relate to each other, how we talk to each other, what we're talking about, our modes of communication, our modes of connecting to each other, what we understand that to be. It just feels like we're on the precipice of this whole other world. And it's exciting to be here right now at a time and to be astrologers as part of it, at least for those of us here as part of this event. We all take a mostly like spiritual, modern, psychological, evolutionary approach to the sky. And so how wonderful to be part of kind of guiding people to remind them that whatever's happening right now, it is part of a soul journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Beautiful.
keep inspired and onto it. And yes, we have astrology. Yes, that's what we're celebrating as well.
We're celebrating. The one thing that is interesting as well, I just want to share some notes.
Mm-hmm.
Nadia,
Thank
I'm
you,
going
Nadia.
to...
Thank you
Should
so
I
much.
stop? Yeah, for
You
sure.
You might, I know you have to go.
Yeah,
or
I'll stay on for as long as I get another minute
Oh,
or
good,
two,
good,
but
good.
yes,
Good.
I'd love to hear.
So these are a few events that are happening today. We're still in the equinox phase. Now, I want to just bring to your attention, where is the chart? That today we're not yet at the equinox as this is being filmed. And I want to bring to your attention that today the sun conjuncts Neptune at 29. And every time a planet moves to a new sign, it has to meet the sun either before or in it. So if it moves into Aries, the sun is going to be there right about, either in Pisces or in Aries. And so that meeting of the planet with the sun, in this case Neptune, is a time to really set the intentions with the equinox, that 29 degrees sun Neptune, and then the sun moves into Aries 0. There is a decision that's being made, and you can plant your tree. You can put your prayers in the water, do some kind of ritual that will carry the promise of the next 14 years, not only this coming equinox and year, but the whole Neptune cycle is beginning actually now that it meets the sun.
Yeah.
And so the sun will personalize, it will birth, it will baptize in a way that Neptune. And so today, between our meetings, just do your little ritual. But as I share this, these notes, Judge blocks implementation of Trump's transgender military ban. And this captures a lot of the back and forth that we're seeing with the retrograde. Trump is doing one thing and then backtracking, sending prisoners to Guantanamo, then sending them to Louisiana. Like, there's a lot of hesitation of going forward, then retreating, going forward and retreating. And this in part has to do with the fact that there's a lot of retrograde from Aries back to Pisces. So what was fully on forward is then suddenly backtracking. And the other thing is that Mars is in Cancer. And the crab, it goes 2 steps forwards, 2 steps back, 2 steps sideways. So there's a lot of indecisions. And a lot of what is happening now is not fully formed. It's in this Pisces, Aries, still amorphous, still in the liminal stage. Even, even when a baby is born and it's like it's out, right? It's out of the womb. That baby is still, its consciousness hasn't fully incarnated. It takes time to really embody, to come into shape and form. And this is where we're at, that a lot of ideas are coming and a lot of thoughts and a lot of actions, but nothing is really final. It's in process. And so interesting, Istanbul mayor is arrested because he wanted to run for elections. And Erdogan just went and jailed him. And then basically blocked the internet in Istanbul so people wouldn't protest. So that's also part of this Aries aggression, and that will cause a backlash because you have the retrograde. Trump mentioned that white South Africans can immigrate to the United States, and 70,000 are applying. So that is part of that moon in Sag opposing Jupiter in Gemini, a lot of migration and people, replanting themselves.
Those that can and those that are getting deported.
Exactly.
Wow.
A lot of mutability. And then Zelensky says, speaking with Trump and hearing about Putin, that there is hope for peace. And Zelensky is going to have a Jupiter return in May, which can be hopeful for an agreement, as it's in Gemini. The JFK files have been released, and people have anticipated, revealing some of the backstory, which is again Aries to Pisces, something from the underworld coming to the light.
Yeah, those retrogrades, Mercury, Venus, it's a hot topic. Wow.
But apparently, so far, there isn't anything yet, at least, that is
Anything new.
challenging the status quo. And I want to bring, that chart into question. We speak about Mercury retrograde, and quite often, we go to what we know about Mercury retrograde, that it, makes our blenders stop working or car problems. But in reality, it's a big pattern. And Mercury retrogrades conjuncts the sun is the time where the retrograde is anchored, just like the Venus star point. So the upcoming one is 4 degrees Aries on the 24th. So the end of this week. So pay attention to the 24th, the same way you're going to pay attention to the 22nd with the Venus Sun conjunction. So these dates are all like boom, boom, boom. And that's usually when things click, when you get your download, when what was uncertain becomes clear. That's when the Sun and Mercury, or Sun and Venus, meet. But pay attention and see the pattern here that all the retrogrades have been in fire signs. And that's what we call the elemental cycle of Mercury. Gary Caton wrote a book about the cycle of Mercury. It's an interesting book to check. But otherwise, we are, since last year, December 24, August 2024, July, April 2024, the fire cycle of Mercury started, and it's going to go for 6 times. Usually it's 4 times, and this one goes up to 6 retrogrades in fire sign. And so what is fire? All this fire energy has a lot to do with creativity, but also with agitation. It's a lot of screaming and protesting and changing. When there's a Mercury elemental phase in fire signs, things are booming, things are in effervescence, and it can create a lot of excess in what you say. You have to watch what you say, and because you're going to have to maybe backtrack later. And it can also lead to a more adventurous, a bolder approach to things. So yeah, this week is very sacred. It's very sacred because we honor astrology. It's very sacred because it's the beginning of the year from a celestial astrological point of view, but it's also sacred because it's an eclipse season. You have 2 retrograde Cazimis, and you have Neptune starting a 14-year cycle. So if there is a week that you want to dedicate for prayer, for planting a tree, for making important decisions, we are in this time of creation. And
Beautiful.
it's biblical, definitely.
It certainly feels like that. Yeah, lovely to all your words that you've said and what you bring up, Maurice. I love what you reminded us here, the Sun and Neptune today on this kind of balsamic phase of the Sun, in a sense, before it starts the new cycle, with Neptune, the last time it's ever going to happen in Pisces, right? Although Neptune goes back to Pisces, we're not going to have the Sun there at the same time, right? So it's the most beautiful kind of next 12 hours or 10 hours to do a ritual. And also with Venus and Mercury retrograde, Venus in the stepping to Earth, let's say, is the time to manifest really strong intentions and ritual, and combine it up, be really creative about it. And then again, also through the rest of the week,
wear red.
And wear red. Well, if you like red. But the other beautiful thing about the Venus cycle at this point now is
be humble as Quetzalcoatl.
Right. Yes. Well, she's going to rise as you talk about Quetzalcoatl and the shimmering of the feathers, of the beautiful green feathers. Is that it's the first time in 251 years that Venus will rise in Pisces, like rise out of the sun's beams in Pisces. So that is really beautiful. Okay. Now, when she rises, 10 degrees before the sun, let's say around the time of the eclipse, and when Neptune moves out into Aries, it's going to be different around different times, different areas of the planet. But how beautiful is that, to think that we've got the Venus rising, heliacal rise in Pisces for the first time. The other interesting thing about the Venus cycle right now is the Aries Venus retrograde in northern latitudes. This is what Gemini Brett, we did a Venus class a few weeks ago, looked into, and we've known about this for a while, that the Aries point, the retrograde Venus in some places, northern latitudes, does not disappear. So she does not go into the underworld at all. So she is a morning star. You can see her in the evening star. The next morning you will see her rise. Now that's only at a certain level. Now this is over Russia and northern latitudes of Canada and stuff. So if you've got clear skies, go and stay up all night and watch her go from one spot to the morning spot. So these underworld journeys are very I think a lot of astrologers talk about the underworld journey of Venus at this retrograde position. but it's not always an underworld journey. It can be an incredibly revealing and opening journey. So don't expect the worst. I mean, this is the same with any retrogrades. Like you are called to the earth to remanifest, to reorganize something about your life. And
that's what I said when they returned the astronauts from that space station, and that happened during a Gemini phase. It was last
with the
June.
Venus at the sun. Yes, right.
And now that Mercury is retrograde, they're returning to Earth. And so it doesn't have to be, you know,
and the next star point.
Exactly. We're a bit brainwashed about the Mercury retrograde being some kind of daunting thing, but it solves problems. Mercury retrograde is a problem solver. I wanted to capture what you were saying about I'm going to share the right way. Sorry about all this. About Venus being on the equinox point 8 years from now. So we're going to have this week, Venus is going to be at 2 degrees with the sun. And in 2033, which is 8 years from now, it will be right at 0 degrees at the last star point in Aries.
Squaring Saturn. Interesting. Wow. Well, that's it. That's the story for another time. I do have like 20 minutes on the Venus star point, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a separate video because we're going on too long now. And because I've got charts of the Venus star point. But having said that, there's already a video on the CIA website that I did for Kepler College. So go on there and I'll put the link into the recording. You can have a look at that and really learn about how significant this Venus star point is, the themes that have gathered over the years of my studying these points. And it's just showing up again like clockwork. It's incredible. I love it. I always say, why do we not use the Venus star points more? And of course it's growing because it really kind of pinpoints, like eclipses do, the themes of the year and what is really being presented, in the world culturally and geopolitically, all kinds of things, trends and fashions and, all of those things that Venus represents. So, but it's been great.
I'll add the link to the recording, to the video.
Great, thank you. Yeah. So look, thank you so much, Maurice. First of all, tell us a little bit about tomorrow for those that, of course, will see this and then go, there is another really big part to this.
Yeah. And so tomorrow we have 15 speakers who are going to present short presentations. And you can come in and out, as you're able to. Later, we'll send you the recording. That's why you register to have the links. And so if you miss some parts, that's going to be fine. But some of the things are going to happen live as far as questions and as far as, the interactions. But it's a Neptune fest. It's an astrology fest. It's an equinox fest. Because of what we've highlighted here, we need, as astrologers, to align, to celebrate, to acknowledge these cycles that are changing our lives and are changing civilization.
Yeah.
So,
and the intention of our understanding of it, I've always thought, and the CIA always stood for consciousness, intention, and astrology, as well as cosmic intelligence. In the sense of, I remember when we started, and it was like how much we understand about ourselves when we do natal astrology and learn about ourselves. And it's like, well, this is what we need to do to the world. Let's understand what we're going through. Let's understand and be part of the co-creative mystique that we can also, let's say, infiltrate as agents. Do you know whatever way we may think, that we are helping it along somehow. Let's not forget that. So
I mean, we just hope two things: that the world will acknowledge astrology because it helps us understand the times we're in. You know,
Yeah.
astrology is a study of time. It spiritualizes time.
Mm.
But we also have to be careful of abuse and misuse and prejudice.
Yeah.
Because like everything, astrology can be used against each other, not only for the greater good. And that's where we are responsible, you know, because the karmic implication of misusing sacred knowledge are
Mhm.
larger than, you know, mundane infractions.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that so much, and then now with AI sort of streaming all our, it'll probably get into videos as well to be able to go, okay, what we've just said, you know, and repeat that somewhere. So although this is all about sharing, but again, you know, who says what and everything, it's just like, whoa. So anyway, keep the astrology positive, real, and intelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, thank you so much, Maurice. Oh, no, Nadiya, Ursula, you're back. Thank you. Any
Yeah.
closing words for you, Ursula, at this
Oh,
Equinox
thank you,
Astrology Day?
Very, very nice. I loved being with you. And well, think about Quetzalcoatl and going into the underworld and being humble.
And all coming to Tula, everyone.
All coming to Mexico. Yes, we can. Well, we have to visit Cacaxtla. That's something you haven't visited. And well, Julia would love to go to Cacaxtla. Beautiful
Next
museum.
year, UAC, after UAC, I was
After UAC, you can come. Yes, of course, we can do it. After
Yeah,
UAC or before or after UAC, we can organize something really
yeah,
nice.
that would be gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you. How wonderful
Blessings.
to be
Thank you
connected.
so much. Blessings.
So look,
Bye.
thanks for everyone that's been online. Of course, keep up with what Ursula's doing, Maurice, Nadiya, and the CIA. When you see this recording, we've got a new magazine, Time Lords, coming out in on the 3rd of April. We have a retreat in Melbourne, Australia. It's all on our website, so do come along to that. It's all about grounding the Saturn Neptune energies, doing some magic with wands and local space and sacred maps, which is what I will be talking about tomorrow at the Neptune Fest. So so yes, I'll see you all tomorrow, and happy equinox, and thanks Maurice, and thanks Ursula and Nadiya. All the best in the
And
astrology world.
we can stay on until tomorrow. You
Okay,
know, there's a lot to talk about.
we could talk for it. Like I said, I've still got all this
Just
stuff.
merge the whole thing.
Well,
Merging Pisces to Aries.
we
Yeah.
did do one thing once, and it wasn't quite 24 hours, but it did go for about 8 hours. This is years ago, but a lot to organize. It was like, you know, I hosted 3 hours, then it moved across to the next place that hosted 3 hours. And I'd love to do a 24-hour version of this one day. Like, you know, so you just need to get different hosts, right? Because you can't stay up all night, and then you sort of come in and out. So anyway, maybe next year.
Yeah.
We'll
Maybe.
do something bigger. So great to be connected. Thanks a lot, everyone, and happy Equinox Astrology Day.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Bye.